This is some insane information that you are all definitely going to want to hear. Recently, in an interview with GlitchingQueen, we got to hear a ton more about the long-cancelled standalone Call of Duty Zombies game from Michael Gummel, who was the project lead on this cancelled game. Today we're going to talk about the interview, the cancelled game and what it could have been, and how it would have completely changed the zombies landscape. First, we're going to go over the interview and basically just recap what was said. I'd recommend you to just watch GlitchingQueen's video since, she made it, but in case you just don't like her or something and you're mean, here's just a summary of it. This cancelled game was codenamed Project Zed, pretty fitting name. It seems like they're referring to this game as just being called Call of Duty Zombies, but there isn't any official name. It would have been developed by Raven Software and it would have used the COD Online engine as a basis to develop off of. The reason it was given to Raven is because they were, at the time, the only studio to have worked on zombies besides Treyarch. They actually made Shangri-La in 2011, and they also made the Cyborg Zombies mode in COD Online. The reason that the idea even came into existence is because Treyarch reportedly didn't want to continue making zombies, or at least didn't know if they could or should. Michael said this was either during or after the development of Black Ops 2, which makes sense with what else we know. It was probably an idea thrown on the table when hands were shifting behind the scenes and power was being given to Jason Blundell and Jimmy Zielinski was leaving the project. I can't confirm this, but I bet that the success of Mob of the Dead and Origins are probably the reason why we didn't get this game. And that sort of open-ended, it was all just a game ending of Origins might have intentionally actually been done to possibly serve as the end of Treyarch's whole zombies storyline. Had Treyarch given up zombies, it would have been delegated to this standalone game instead, and we have no idea what the, quote, third mode, or so to speak, would have been in Black Ops 3. Focusing on Project Zed itself now, though, it would have been free-to-play first and foremost. This is pretty interesting because, obviously, at this point in time, I don't think COD had experimented at all with free-to-play besides, COD Online. Not even the phone games for World at War and Black Ops Zombies were free, those cost money. It also seems like there would have been a lot of modes to play. We know that we would have had traditional 4-player survival maps, but we also know that we would have gotten an open world game. If you watched my last video where I talked about it, you know that this is just further proof that Activision really were contemplating an open world zombies experience. One thing we did learn throughout the interview is that this game would have been heavily built off of COD Online, and we know that COD Online later added a Battle Royale experiment which came out even before PUBG did, surprisingly. And so with that also comes the revelation from him that there would have been a PvPvE mode, so players versus zombies. Obviously we have yet to see that in Zombies to date. I mean, there's kind of grief, but this kind of sounds like it would have actually been shooting each other, not just trying to get each other killed. I mean, we do have Horde Point from COD World War II and Modern Warfare 3. And then we do have that leaked MWZ mode that might be a PvPvE mode, but we still don't really know much about that. We don't know if that's happening or not. Back to Project Zed though, Michael claimed that the whole game would have had a sort of Mad Max theme. This open world experience would have had players starting out in a gladiatorial arena, which sounds pretty similar to 9 in Black Ops 4, but then the gates would open and expand into a giant post-apocalyptic wasteland where you could run around and help other survivors and they would reward you for your efforts. He reiterated, though, that it would be sort of a campy theme and it wouldn't take itself very seriously, so rather than what we got in Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, it probably would have been more like what we got in Infinite Warfare. He also says that this would have been a standalone live service game, like Call of Duty Online of course, and not a release and forget kind of game like Call of Duty currently is outside of Warzone. There's clearly an extreme focus on microtransactions here. If you remember, this was being worked on in between Black Ops 2 and 3, so microtransactions actually hadn't come to zombies yet at all. He emphasized customizable characters, which is definitely interesting. I think even back in Black Ops 3, Treyarch had wanted to add customizable characters to zombies, kinda similar to the system and multiplayer and campaign in that game, it just makes sense. COD Online lasted for about 8 years, I believe, and I bet this game probably would have lasted for about that much time too. Michael also showed us a brief snippet of the design document for the project. There's tons and tons of things to learn here, but a couple things you'll notice are the emphasis on microtransactions, bringing the core multiplayer addictiveness into zombies, making sure the game is casual accessible, and creating an original experience, not just copy-pasting maps from older games. This actually contradicts a lot of what people thought this game would be, 8 years ago if you remember, if you were in the community. when everyone thought we would get a standalone zombies game that was just like one big mashup of all the maps. A lot of the things that Michael talked about actually did become things in either COD Online or the rest of Call of Duty. Open world zombies, gladiator zombies, we can probably assume vehicles were planned as well, it just makes sense, especially with that Mad Max theme. All of these things did get added at some point later down the line. A huge emphasis in this interview is placed on experimentation. Michael talks a ton about how much freedom Raven had with COD Online because, since it was a Chinese-only game, there was no preconceived notions about what the game should be. If you were ever wondering why Call of Duty Online never got released to the rest of the world, I think this might be why. Activision didn't want the ideas of this game to bleed out into the perception of the franchise's brand. If you think of it in simple business terms, Activision had two pools of players with two entirely different ideas of what the name Call of Duty means. They had no intentions of intermingling these people, and what works in China doesn't really work in the rest of the world. If you go on Call of Duty Mobile on your phone, you'll see tons of ideas that were pulled from COD Online that are very much so present in a lot of very popular games in China. And obviously anyone who has played Call of Duty Mobile will tell you that the monetization is extremely aggressive there. It's really in your face, you cannot get away from it whatsoever. And all of that was pulled from COD Online, and COD Online is even worse. I think if I remember right, actually in COD Online, you would be able to get like limited time, like you could have access to a gun for like 2 days, and then you would have to like pay more money to keep using the gun. Like it was, it's downright despicably like money hungry and greedy. But for some reason, those kind of games, like gacha games, that stuff just really works in China. I have no idea why. Those people they just like bad games. Like I don't know what I'm saying. I like bad games too. Look, my entire channel is like based around a bad game. So that's the gist of the interview. If you haven't heard any of that before, it's probably a lot to take in. The ideas presented here are some insane innovations to the formula we knew. And you gotta remember, at the time this was all made and thought up of, we'd only played up to Origins in Black Ops 2. We had not experienced Black Ops 3. We hadn't even experienced the weird trip that was Exo Zombies. Initially, you might think that due to the relation to COD Online, this would be an insane balls to the wall kind of thing like that, but we know that it wouldn't be, because it would actually be under direct supervision by Activision, and it would be released worldwide, except for in China, because they can't have zombies because they're weird. So it still probably wouldn't have gotten much crazier than zombies did in the future anyway. I mean, it's really hard to get crazier than Black Ops 4. I would love to be in the room and like get like a video of like the pitch to Activision to make the map 9. Like I really want to know like what was that like? For this section, we're going to examine what zombies might look like today had this game actually come out. First and foremost, obviously, we wouldn't have seen a lot of the things we know about zombies today. We wouldn't have Exo Zombies, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, World War II, or Black Ops 4. Since we know that the theme would have been lighthearted, I highly doubt we would have gotten a story as deep and intrinsically purposeful like the Ether story was. I'm sure that the story probably would have been there, but the game probably would have put the emphasis on survival first and story second. I'll say, I think Raven does actually know how to do a story fairly well. They made the campaign for Black Ops Cold War, if I remember right, and let me give you a warning, this may be a controversial opinion, but I think that campaign is easily A tier, if not S tier. It is insane. That's a topic for a different video though, but that's not the only thing we know Raven has done. If I remember right, they also made World War II Zombies, they made Modern Warfare Remastered, and now they're the lead development studio on Warzone. I'm actually really surprised that their only like proper game they got to make was Modern Warfare Remastered, because it seems like Raven are actually a pretty talented studio that has a lot to bring to the table, and they have a pretty rich history with Call of Duty going back as far as I can tell to Black Ops 14 years ago. That's a long time. Second, by 2024, I think this game would have been dropped and dead. I think that by 2019, with a Modern Warfare reboot in Warzone, they would have ended support for Project Zed. That COD Online engine is frankly not amazingly new. It sort of feels like a version of the old IW engine, maybe the one that was in the original MW3 or Ghosts. We've never seen a COD game get its entire engine changed in an update, so we have no real reason to believe that would have happened. Standards would have gone far up for sure, and the game's technical limitations would be super visible. We see this a lot in live service games where the engines are feeling really dated, and it becomes pretty obvious that the engine is holding back innovation. Really, all I have to say here is like, look no further than Bethesda for this. Anyway, because we know so much experimentation would have happened, I think we would be in a wildly different place. Basically, think, right? We didn't get open world zombies until 2021. These guys were planning it in 2013. Take a step back real quick. That was over 10 years ago. Michael was clearly a super visionary guy who wanted people to have a lot of fun playing zombies. In that sense, he's almost a bit more like Jimmy Zielinski than Jason Lundell. If you've noticed, most of Jimmy's maps are more like gameplay first sandboxes with a hidden story second, and Jason's maps are story first with a side of story second, and a final course of even more story. Obviously his maps have a ridiculous amount of gameplay too, hours and hours for every playthrough, but I wouldn't say that that was ever the emphasis, the focal point of his experiences. With that in mind, if we got Project Zed as a game, it might have actually been like somewhat of a Zombies reboot with the same style of gameplay that we'd come to expect from Zombies prior. Now, there's no real way to know what would have happened next after they canned Project Zed, but I personally don't think there would have been a Project Zed 2 or anything like that. I think we would have gotten Cold War zombies, or maybe we would have just gotten Warzone zombies sooner than we did, and it just would have had a bigger experimental background to reach from for its gameplay. The reason I don't think that we would have gotten a sequel game is because if you've been unfortunate enough to boot up any of these games in the past 4 years, you'd see the absolute metric shit ton of studios that make each game. While yes, games still have one lead developer who creates the design document, every game is worked on by pretty much everybody now. In the past, sure, they would occasionally help each other out, like the Brute in Infection reuses some animations from the Panzer Soldat in Origins, or Raven helps make Shangri-La while Treyarch worked on Moon, but the games were all clearly and very distinctly their own studio's game. I think this is actually a much greater problem with Call of Duty as a whole now and is contributing to this sort of issue where literally all of these games are having at least like 14 simultaneous identity crises because they're being made by 14,000 people instead of just 500, but that is a topic for a different video. Circling back to my point, because of the way that everybody makes everything now, I don't think that they'd have enough time to make Project Zed 2. They'd have to outsource it like they did with COD Mobile or Warzone Mobile. Absolutely atrocious game, by the way. It literally runs at like 20 frames. Like, somebody please storm in there and teach them about optimization and QA testing, please. Okay, tangent aside, if we assume that Project Zed was successful, Activision probably wouldn't want to outsource it and have someone else make it. But we also have to consider the other reality, the one where Project Zed was a total flop. Obviously, we wouldn't get a Project Zed 2 there either, but we also may never have seen zombies return ever again. It's possible that Treyarch would have picked the mode back up, or maybe even Sledgehammer or Infinity Ward still would have had their go at it, but we just really don't know. Me personally, I'm a firm believer that the reason we're still getting eggs put in the Zombies basket today is because of Zombies Chronicles. In case you didn't know, if I'm remembering right, Zombies Chronicles was the best-selling DLC pack ever in the PlayStation Store history. If it's not the biggest ever, then it was definitely the biggest of that year. Plus, it was released for a 2-year-old game. I'm positive that Activision saw this, and this is why they won't give up on zombies, because they're pursuing another Chronicles-like hit. If Project Zed was a thing, we wouldn't have gotten that, so we have no idea if Activision would have enough faith in the mode to constantly keep giving it the green light. This is all a lot to take in for all of us. To think just how close we were to a completely different timeline where zombies was just a side game and not a side mode. This video is just a brief little examination on this topic. Obviously, this interview just broke a couple days ago as of writing this, and I haven't had 15 years to think about it, but it's really something interesting to talk about. Do you think this would have been a better direction for zombies to go in, or are you glad we got what we got? Personally, I would have loved to see both the zombies that we know and love and this version at the same time. If Raven wasn't busy with COD Online, that would have been pretty cool to see. Or maybe COD Online or COD Mobile got much bigger, more fleshed out zombies experiences that tried experimenting, and then Treyarch used the data from the experimentation for their huge experiences. Who knows?
I am far